Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
We're turning now to an extraordinary development inside a courtroom in Washington today, featuring opening arguments in the trial of longtime Trump advisor Roger Stone. Prosecutors with the Trump Justice Department laying out a case suggesting President Trump may have committed a new crime in office by lying to the Mueller probe. This was all part of the blockbuster opening statement by former Mueller prosecutor himself, Aaron Zelinsky, now a regular DOJ line prosecutor. He's telling jurors they can basically convict Stone for lying to Congress because Stone allegedly lied about the fact that he twice spoke with Trump before the 2016 election. Something Trump shot down by telling Mueller, I have no recollection of any communication with Stone. We've heard allegations Trump was lying about that before. What's new here is that it is Trump's own Justice Department insisting that it's false in court and saying they have the evidence to prove it. Politico reporting on that very part of today's argument by saying DOJ was basically committing an extraordinary act of defiance against its own White House there. Now, that is the Donald Trump part. Then there's what Stone was allegedly doing for his campaign and whether he enlisted these men to help him get secret intel on WikiLeaks. Prosecutors say Stone lied about his dealings with both of them, alleging that he asked radio host Randy Credico and conservative author Jerome Corsi to get to WikiLeaks, that he had two intermediaries there. Now, long before Stone was ever arrested or charged, there was a huge amount of intrigue about his claims of a WikiLeaks back channel. Before that arrest that you see on your screen there, we actually interviewed both of these people who may have been the back channels and pressed them on Roger Stone's claims. The allegation from Mr. Stone is that you are the intermediary between Assange and him.
I have no idea some of the things I may have said to him, but certainly did not pass any information from Julian Assange to Roger Stone.
You flatly deny that Stone allegation. This was Roger Stone saying he had an intermediary. Is that you?
I don't know. You'll have to ask Roger.
You'll have to ask Roger? Well, they are. So we turn to someone now who was inside that very courtroom today, Politico reporter Darren Samuelson. Good evening.
Good evening, Ari.
Busy times. Let's start with the Trump Justice Department putting forward evidence that reasonably you could infer as meaning Trump lied to Mueller.
Reasonably, you could infer that. Now, they don't charge Donald Trump. They never have charged Donald Trump. But today in court, they did provide evidence that Roger Stone was on the phone talking to Donald Trump in the days after the DNC hack went public and Julian Assange was threatening to drop all manner of material to rock the Hillary Clinton campaign. It was a key part, you could say, of the Justice Department opening arguments that they made today. About an hour-long presentation. It was made in a very layman way for the jurors who are clearly
simple,
coming into this probably pretty darn
storyline. For people watching this, though, who may not even be that concerned with this case's outcome, how rare is it for the Justice Department to go out of its way to say something, and this is a Mueller prosecutor speaking, not just anybody, and say something that suggests Trump lied to Mueller?
Yeah, that's pretty remarkable. I mean, clearly, President Trump and Attorney General Bill Barr have been on a lot of the same pages since the Mueller probe ended, about 7 or 8 months ago now, 6-7 months ago. But, Aaron Zelinsky, who is a key part of the Robert Mueller investigation, clearly remembers the investigation and everything that they put together, all the evidence that they collected. he had an opportunity today to lay it all out there, put all the cards out there. It felt to me watching this like a Cliff Notes version of the Mueller report for the general public. For an hour, you really got to hear, piece by piece.
I'm jealous you were inside the courtroom, and we've been reading yours and others' notes from it. That's the next thing I want to ask you about being in there. How key was it to the government's case to prove that Roger really was using one or both of these people to actually try to get stuff from WikiLeaks? They have more or less downplayed that when we've interviewed them.
It was very key. I mean, if they're talking about trying to get Roger Stone online to Congress, and Roger Stone was saying that his intermediary was Randy Credico, today they were presenting evidence that, in fact, it was Jerome Corsi. Now, this was just the opening argument, so we're going to see a lot more material, emails, communications. The Justice Department indicated they've got hundreds of emails and text messages between Roger Stone and both individuals, and are going to explain. I mean, we're going to see Randy Credico on the stand, too, in the coming days, and Randy Credico is going to talk about how he was trying to argue to Roger Stone, look, I wasn't your intermediary. I don't know why you're pinning this on me, and the back and forth that led to, and then ultimately, to the witness tampering charge that follows, where Roger Stone is urging Randy Credico, to plead the fifth.
And briefly, who do you think is the potentially most damaging witness to Stone?
The most damaging witness to Stone, I think Randy Credico could be someone, that certainly will be watching, because he will provide a lot of that testimony. Steve Bannon will be coming up in the coming days. Unclear exactly how much Steve Bannon's going to want to say on the stand, but we understand that he will be there, and he'll be talking about the communications that he had with Roger Stone over the course of the Trump campaign. Rick Gates is going to be fascinating to watch, too, and especially given the way that other defense attorneys have tried to shred Rick Gates' credibility because he obviously pled guilty lying to Congress, lying to the FBI. Yeah. The way the Paul Manafort attorneys handled him, I think that's something we're going to be seeing from the Roger Stone attorneys as they go after Rick Gates' credibility.
It is Thursday, the 7th of November of 2019, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. A little bit of jambalaya, a little bit of spice in your life. Well, what a day yesterday, huh? We got to experience the fallout from the election results as they came in Tuesday night, and then all day yesterday, and looks like we had a pretty good blue wave yet. The Republicans. What is it with these people? Really? They cannot accept any result that is outside of their, fevered, conspiracy-addled fantasies. Matt Beaven is not going to concede. And did you know that because they've retained Republican majorities in their bicameral system there, both houses, that there is a way to pretty much nullify the election and just install Matt Beaven as governor and continue on? They can do that in Kentucky. Yeah. And did you know the last time that an election was contested was in 1899? After the racists had taken over the Republican Party and turned it into pretty much what we know of it now. So a Democrat who had run on a campaign for the working man against a Republican who was running on pretty much, the man of the prince, the money, the money people. And the Democrat was concerned about a certain electoral irregularities. He had contested the election. They recounted, and he won. But only for 3 days because the Republicans shot him dead. They just do not accept results. And there's historical precedent for it, especially in Kentucky. We'll see. The outrage may be too great, but I doubt it. I mean, come on. We're talking about Kentucky. What's on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy? Because we have some fairly longer pieces today than we normally get in the Bistro Cafe, so we should get on with it. Well, of course, at the top, that was a breakdown on Roger Stone's trial yesterday, and it's been revealed that Trump lied to Mueller in the course of the Roger Stone trial. I don't know the number of times that Trump's name was invoked during the trial. I believe it was about a dozen. It's almost as if it's a trial about Donald Trump. Well, of course it is. Because Roger Stone is there pretty much for campaign finance violations and other questionable deeds in consort with the guy in the Oval Office who is abusing his power. Indeed. On the rest of the menu, California revealed for the first time it has been involved in an 18-month Facebook probe and that the social media company has been stonewalling the investigation. Wow. It's almost as if it's a tactic of the right. Almost. Rich, white, conservative men are spending tens of millions of dollars to fund women-led anti-abortion groups. Some of these right-wing groups need to have a black shield. Some of them need to have the lady shield. And many questions remain unanswered about the Ukraine disinformation campaign, so it only seems fair and balanced that John Solomon is forced to answer, how about a dozen? After the break, we move to the chef's table, where Malaysia has detained Cambodian opposition leader Mu Sochua after a news conference in Indonesia. And 2 former Twitter employees, along with a third man, face U.S. federal charges of spying for the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Of our homepage at netrootsradio.com to the rightish of the page. Deftly located by Superior Graphic Design, I might add, and we thank Tom for that. Superior Graphic Design is our chat room link right there by the social media scroll. Like I said, deftly located. And Kelly Lincoln monitors the chat room link, so thank you, Kelly, for doing so. To the leftish of the page from the chat room link at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com is the link to our Patreon site. And do please become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio. It doesn't take much. Maybe how about the cost of an espresso-type coffee drink sent our way once a month? We're able to stretch those dollars. We have over 8 years of experience, 24/7, 365, continuous resistance radio, and we've been broadcasting for over 8 years now. And we've been able to do so because of your generosity. Just a little bit helps. That internet provider bill just went up. How dare they? And the other vendors, nothing goes down. I've noticed that recently recent as in the last several decades. So it all goes up, and we are able to mitigate that because of you, and we thank you so much for that. If you would like to follow the show or follow the station on Twitter, you can do so simply by going to @NetRootsRadio, and Tom takes care of that for us, and we thank Tom. I, of course, take care of @JusticePutnam, and I also post the show notes and links diary on Daily Co's and then link that up on social media about 10 minutes before showtime. And you can follow the show on Twitter @CookbookWest. Pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, etc., etc., etc. I don't understand. People don't know what quid pro quo in America. They don't know, apparently. Quid pro quo. That's some sort of Latin. I don't know that word. I don't know what that means. Give me a break. Ugh. It's like et cetera. I don't know what et cetera would mean. I've never heard Latin before. I suppose there are people that dim-witted. I mean, look at John Kennedy down there in Louisiana. Quid pro quo. I have said before, I've cooked many a dish. And you don't need to blanch the quid pro quo for very long before you have some pretty chewy bribes going on. Okay? Very chewy. Let's get into this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. And it comes out of Reuters by Diane Bartz and Parrish Dave. California revealed for the first time an 18-month investigation into Facebook Inc.'s privacy practices and accused the social media giant of hampering the probe by failing to turn over emails from chief executive Mark Zuckerberg. Well, what about his emails? The revelation is the latest bad news for Facebook, which is already facing an investigation by 47 U.S. states, 47 out of 50. Think of that. Over concerns the company engaged in anti-competitive practices, put consumer data at risk, and pushed up advertising prices. Well, look, if you have a bunch of Russians buying ads on Facebook, you want them to pay more, don't you? Jeez. This is not a nonprofit. Will Castleberry, Facebook's vice president of state and local policy, said the company has cooperated extensively with the state of California's investigation. To date, we have provided thousands of pages of written responses and hundreds of thousands of documents, he said. Yeah, but not what they asked for. They want Zuckerberg's emails. Where are those? Yeah, you've handed over thousands of pages of written responses with the word no written on each one. A spokeswoman for California Attorney General Xavier Becerra quickly shot back. It appears we have different definitions of cooperation, noting there were 25 requests the company declined to answer or provide documents to fulfill. The company's stock price barely budged after the announcement of the California probe. The Facebook state investigations are part of a larger landscape of probes of big tech firms by the U.S. Justice Department and the FTC, as well as the House of Representatives Judiciary Committee. The Massachusetts Attorney General launched a similar privacy-focused investigation into the company last year after the Cambridge Analytica revelation surfaced, while Washington, D.C.'s Attorney General announced in December that he was suing Facebook over the scandal as well. California's investigation began in 2018 as a probe into the Cambridge Analytica scandal, but expanded over time to an investigation into whether Facebook has violated California law by, among other things, deceiving users and ignoring its own policies in allowing third parties broad access to user data. Facebook had inappropriately shared information belonging to 87 million users with the now-defunct British political consulting firm Cambridge Analytica. The consultee's clients included Donald Trump's 2016 election campaign. And let's not forget, it wasn't in California. I believe it was in either Texas or Arizona. Facebook had set up an office dedicated and staffed with Facebook employees to sit with Pasquale, their data guru at the time, who is now Trump's campaign manager, and other Trump campaign officials in an actual office as they, tightened up what they got from Cambridge Analytica in their targeting campaign. Facebook provided the tech help for that. Lisa Needham of Share Blue Media brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. Anti-abortion groups love to have a woman as their public face. However, behind the scenes, rich white men play an outsized role in funding and controlling the operations. Take the Susan B. Anthony list. In public, the group highlights CEO Marjorie Danfelser trotting her out for galas and meetings with Trump. Behind the scenes, though, it's conservative white money men pulling the strings. Conservative hedge fund manager Sean Feeler runs an awful lot of the show at the SBA list, albeit quietly and through a snarl of other companies. Over at one of his main companies, American Principles Project, he describes himself as someone focusing on monetary reform and mentions that he sits on several boards, including the Susan B. Anthony list. Feeler is quite modest. Rewire News called him the little-known ATM of the fundamentalist Christian anti-choice movement. From 2010 to 2014, he donated more than $18 million to anti-abortion and anti-LGBTQ causes. Over $500,000 of that went to Susan B. Anthony. Feeler donated even more to fund an app called FEM, with 2 M's, a period tracker that tells users to use natural birth control methods. Oh, you mean like a little bit of a beat and a little bit of a rhythm. Susan B. Anthony paid Feeler to build an app for them as well, then forgot to disclose it in their tax returns. Tisk, tisk. Feeler isn't the only rich man helping run the show at Susan B. Anthony. His colleague at American Principles, Frank Cannon, is also a big player. In 2012, Cannon sat on the Susan B. Anthony list board, and the organization claimed he worked 50 hours every week for a salary of $12,000 per year. During the 2016 election, Trump named Cannon one of the co-chairs of his pro-life coalition. By 2017, Cannon was a former treasurer, but was raking in over $200,000 per year from Susan B. Anthony list. Things are much the same at anti-abortion group Students for Life of America. There, the figurehead is Kristen Hawkins. However, the 7-member board has only one woman. Some of the men on the board seem relatively small time, like Paul Horax, who the SFLA website describes as head of an organization that equips Christian men to protect women by working to end sexual narcissism. On the other hand, the board also boasts heavyweights like Ray Ruddy. Ruddy is a conservative multi-millionaire with deep ties to George W. Bush. He runs a Gerard Health Foundation, which has little to do with health and everything to do with funding anti-abortion groups. In fact, Ruddy and Gerard are also big backers of Lila Rose's Life Action, another anti-abortion organization. Women may be at the front of these organizations, but they're fueled by the ideology and money of anti-choice men. Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is by Sidney Blumenthal. Yes, that's Sidney Blumenthal, writing for Just Security. Donald Trump's attempt to force the government of Ukraine to investigate former Vice President Joe Biden was launched through a disinformation campaign whose first and chief propagator was John Solomon, a conservative columnist with a pattern of publishing false and misleading stories. His work, according to the Washington Post, has played an important role in advancing a flawed Trump-friendly tale of corruption in Ukraine. Solomon began his career as a reporter for the Associated Press, but subsequently bounced around in right-wing media from the Washington Times to a website called Circa News, owned by Sinclair and now defunct. In 2012, the Columbia Journalism Review concluded that Solomon has a history of bending the truth to his storyline and distorting facts and hyping petty stories. Among his claims to infamy is publishing the debunked Uranium One conspiracy. Yes, another Hillary hater, isn't he? Blumenthal then goes on to flesh out Solomon's career, but we're gonna scroll down to what's pertinent here in the present. When the scandal broke about Trump and Ukraine, uncomfortable facts emerged about Solomon that cast a new light on how he came to write his articles. Solomon admitted that he used Lev Parnas to arrange his interviews and serve as his translator. Solomon also sent his work in draft form to Parnas, apparently for vetting. Parnas, along with his associate, Igor Fruman, worked closely with Rudy Giuliani, Trump's personal attorney, on the Ukraine intrigues, and were reportedly trying to alter the management of Naftogaz, a Ukrainian gas and oil company, to obtain lucrative contracts. Parnas paid Giuliani $500,000 for consulting on his company called Fraud Guarantee, while Firtash paid Parnas through DeGenova and Tonsing as a translator. CNN reported on the scale of Firtash's financial support for Parnas. Now, I did skip past the part where Firtash, of course, is under indictment and is trying to prevent extradition. I believe he's in Austria right now, trying to prevent extradition to the United States for, being a mobster. And this guy is paying Igor and Lev. And Lev and Igor paid Rudy. Solomon hires these two Russian operatives, being paid by a Russian mobster, to pretty much make up a disinformation campaign. It gets even deeper because Joseph DeGenova and Victoria Tonsing are Fruman's attorneys, but they're also attorneys for Dmitry Firtash, the mobster. And they get to go on TV and spread their lies. Immediately after the Trump-Ukraine scandal was exposed, Solomon abruptly left his perch at the Hill and was hired by Fox News, where he had previously appeared dozens of times to amplify his conspiracy theories. Now, he poses behind the image of an investigative reporter at Fox News while maintaining radio silence about the details of his own convoluted role. Many questions about Solomon's part in the disinformation operation remain unanswered, but here are a few. How about a dozen? Did you ever take money or benefit directly or indirectly from Dmitry Firtash? Did DeGenova and Tonsing introduce you to Firtash to serve as your source? Was it before they formally became his attorneys? To whom and how much did Firtash pay to generate and circulate the disinformation you published? How much did you pay Parnas? Was it your money? Whose money was it? Was your employment or use of Parnas arranged by DeGenova and Tonsing? Explain the involvement of your attorneys in the full range of your transactions with Parnas. When did you hire Digenova and Tunsing as your attorneys, and for what matters? How much have you paid them? Over how long a period of time? And for which specific services? How many articles have you written that included information provided from sources you knew to be clients of your lawyers? You know, Digenova and Tunsing. And on what topics? Now we're down to number 5. When you were publishing stories about the Clintons' alleged involvement with the Uranium One Company, did you tell your editors that one or more of your sources were represented by your lawyer, Victoria Tunsing? Besides relying on your lawyer, what due diligence did you do to assess the credibility of those now discredited sources? Number 6. Rudy Giuliani sent Secretary of State Pompeo a file containing your articles and raw interview notes you conducted in an effort to fire U.S. Ambassador Yovanovitch. Were you aware beforehand that Giuliani was involving Pompeo in the scheme? Detail the full scope of your involvement with and knowledge of Giuliani's activities. You claim that you met Parnas through Congressman Pete Sessions. When did you first become aware of Parnas and Fruman's financial contributions to Sessions? What other favors has Sessions done for you? Number 8. In your stories on Attorney General William Barr's probe of the origins of the investigation of the Russian intervention into the U.S. election of 2016, in which you have claimed FBI abuses and troubling questions about the Mueller report, are you relying on Digenova and Tunsing, longtime associates of Barr, in communication with him to help you? Number 9. Did you enlist your attorneys to speak to Attorney General Barr to help you get a new job at Fox News from its chairman, Rupert Murdoch? Was the subject of your employment raised in their meeting on October 9th? Number 10. ProPublica reports that Joanna Durlaga, then the Hill's publisher, wrote 2 memos to the company's president, Richard Beckman, worrying that Solomon was tearing down the traditional wall separating the business side from the news side. She noted that Solomon, as executive vice president for Hill.tv, had negotiated nearly a $160,000 advertising deal with Job Creators Network, targeting business owners in Maine. Solomon then had a quote from that group's director inserted in the story. Was that the only story in which you intervened, in which you had a financial stake in what has been described as pay-to-play news? How much money would you calculate you personally gained from writing or editing self-interested stories in The Hill? Durlaga was forced out of her job at The Hill in April of 2018. Did you play any role in her removal? Number 11. In May of 2018, Bob Cusack, editor-in-chief of The Hill, notified colleagues that you would be busy with our video initiatives, but effective immediately when he writes for us, it will be as an opinion contributor. What precipitated that demotion? More recently, were you fired from The Hill? And number 12. Does Fox News fact-check your stories? Indeed, very important questions that John Solomon should be forced to answer, in my opinion. Finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. Well, we better get to our break. And when we get back from that break, we're going to go through weather from around the world and finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. This week, been there, killed that. Over the past few generations, zombie movies have transformed from semi-serious horror to a subgenre where parodies now prevail. Just since the first Zombieland in 2009, we've seen an explosion of the subgenre, even on the small screen, all of which raises the bar for a successful decade-in-the-making sequel. Also since 2009, the stars of the original, Woody Harrelson, Emma Stone, and Jesse Eisenberg, have become big deals, making their swaggering, unassuming, and probably heavily improvised mastery of their roles a big part of why Zombieland Double Tap works. Another reason would include some fresh characters, including Rosario Dawson as Nevada. Remember, everyone here is named for where they were born, a possible love interest for Tallahassee if the franchise continues, and newcomer Zoe Deutsch as the straight out-of-the-valley Madison. There's really not much plot here. Emma Stone's Wichita gets freaked out when Eisenberg's Columbus proposes to her, using a ring made from the Hope Diamond, just as her sister Little Rock gets into an argument with Tallahassee, and the two women leave. Oh, did I mention they're living in the White House? At any rate, Tallahassee, Wichita, Columbus, and the newfound Madison take off to find Little Rock, who they've heard is headed to Graceland with a hippie named Berkeley. Hijinks and super zombies, nicknamed T-800s, ensue until a final battle at a commune called Babylon, which is maybe a little too similar to the battle at the end of the first one. But thanks to a snappy script, easygoing acting, and a few hilarious new touches, Zombieland Double Tap is a must-see for those who dug the first one, and nearly that if you didn't. There's little you won't get by jumping in now. And make sure you stay through the credits. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. Catch up with us at Take2MovieReview.com and feed us back on our page on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Suzanne Bard. This July, just 1 year after turning pro, 15-year-old Coco Gauff beat tennis superstar Venus Williams in the first round at Wimbledon. She went on to win 2 more rounds against highly ranked players during the tournament. Similarly, in 2009, 17-year-old Melanie Oden beat a series of top-ranked opponents, making it to the 5th round of the U.S. Open. How did these newcomers do so well? One factor, in addition to stellar play, could have been their meteoric rise in status, both prior to and during the tournament. Opponents seeing the newbies' names climb in the rankings might have been somewhat psyched out. It's a phenomenon that Duke University researcher Hemant Cocker calls status momentum.
If that person is carrying momentum, you tend to feel more threatened or intimidated by their momentum, and as a result, your performance is impaired.
Cocker and his colleagues analyzed more than 100,000 matchups between tennis pros and millions of amateur chess games. They found that players fared worse when facing opponents who were rising in rank. And it's not just that the rise in rank reflected higher skills.
Our research shows that you will be more threatened by someone who has improved their ranking from 10 to 8 to 4 than who was always at 4. Even though the two players have objectively the same rank, you feel more threatened by the one who has risen in rank.
Cocker thinks status momentum may come into play wherever hierarchies are formed and disrupted, especially in the world of business. His team conducted several online experiments simulating real-world business scenarios to investigate the psychological mechanisms behind status momentum. They conclude that people expect that a competitor's future rank will actually mirror physical laws of momentum. That is, an object in motion will continue to stay in motion unless acted upon by an external force.
When they see someone moving up in rank, they think that this person has momentum, and their first thought is, oh, this person will continue to move up. So these studies find that people tend to project opponents' rank in future who have momentum, and as a result, they feel threatened.
The study is in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. The research also revealed that focusing on their own strengths buffered participants against their competitors' status momentum. Another way to feel less threatened? Pretend that the competitor's rise in rank is due to an error in the rating system.
Delusion plays a huge role in how we maintain our self-esteem. It helps us feel good about ourselves.
Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Suzanne Bard.
Hi, It's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. And it doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution, and you'll get a wondiferous pair of Netroots radio stickers for application to your backpack, your bumper sticker, or your banjo. Well, it's up to you which backpack you want to put it on. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage, because you are our biggest donor. netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
Is the right to vote being gutted in America? I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. Let's begin by considering as an object lesson the recently announced voter purge in Georgia, where 300,000 names will be struck from the voter rolls, which is huge, 4% of all voters, in a state where the 2018 governor's race, Brian Kemp versus Stacey Abrams, was decided by 1.4%. The Georgia Secretary of State's office claims that this purging of the voter rolls is, quote, a routine process, but experience teaches that wholesale voter purges result in active voters being deleted, with the highest impact being on young people and communities of color. Taking a meat cleaver to an issue that requires a scalpel is wrong, and, as the advocacy group Fair Fight Action, founded by Stacey Abrams, asserts, voters should not be thrown off the rolls because they chose not to vote in 2 elections. The Supreme Court, 5-4, recently has given the green light to these state voter purges, as well as democracy-killing partisan gerrymandering, and the court has gutted the Voting Rights Act as well. In sum, powerful institutions, the executive, legislative, and judicial branches, far too often are marching in lockstep to undermine the essential pillar of democracy, voting. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU, because freedom can't protect itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1990. That was the day that Lemuel Rickett Boulware died. Boulware had a notorious reputation with labor leaders. He was the vice president for employee relations for General Electric during the 1950s. He took the lead on labor for the company in 1947, a year after a 17-week bitter strike at General Electric. Determined not to have another such strike, Boulware cultivated his own brand of labor relations. He advocated doing extensive research and offering what he called a fair, firm offer at the bargaining table. This meant the company would essentially give their final offer on the first day of bargaining and hold nothing back for future negotiations. This take-it-or-leave-it approach came to be known as Boulwareism. Other companies copied his tactic. Boulware came to be regarded as a master negotiator by corporate leaders. He was known for writing internal communications to GE employees with catchphrases advocating management's position on labor issues. In 1969, at the AFL-CIO convention in Atlantic City, Paul Jennings, the president of the Industrial Union of Electrical Workers, derided Boulware's tactics. Jennings described it as telling the workers what they're entitled to and trying to shove it down their throats. Boulware once described fair share unionism as wrong in principle and bad in practice. He is credited with helping to move Ronald Reagan to a more conservative approach to labor. Reagan went to work as a spokesperson for General Electric in 1954. At the time, Reagan had been a Democrat and also president of his union, the Screen Actors Guild. During his time at GE, he moved increasingly to the radical right, especially on labor issues. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
I read the news today, oh boy. It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
The Washington Post reported Wednesday night that Trump wanted Attorney General Barr to hold a news conference declaring that the commander-in-chief had broken no laws during a phone call in which he pressed his Ukrainian counterpart to investigate a political rival, though Barr ultimately declined to do so, according to people familiar with the matter. The request from Trump went from the president to other White House officials and eventually to the DOJ. Trump, of course, denies the report, calling it fake news. It's official. Adam Schiff announcing that the House will begin televised public hearings in the impeachment inquiry on Wednesday.
We will begin our open hearings in the impeachment inquiry next week. We will be beginning with the testimony of Ambassador Taylor and Ambassador Kent on Wednesday, and we will have Ambassador Yovanovitch testify on Friday. These will be the first of the open hearings. And I think you will see throughout the course of the testimony, not only their testimony, but many others, the most important facts are largely not contested.
In the meantime, the depositions behind closed doors continue. An aide to Mike Pence, who was listening in on the July 25th phone call between Trump and Zelensky, Jennifer Williams, is testifying on Thursday. The other witness scheduled for Thursday is former National Security Advisor John Bolton. At press time, it was still unclear, though unlikely, that he'll show up. And the transcripts of the depositions already completed are being released. On Wednesday, we got the testimony of Bill Taylor. He's the top U.S. diplomat in Ukraine. He will also be the first witness in the public testimony beginning next week. Taylor told investigators it was his, quote, clear understanding that the transfer of military aid to Ukraine was being held up until Kiev promised to and publicly state that Ukraine would investigate Burisma, the company on whose board Hunter Biden served, and alleged Ukrainian interference in the 2016 presidential election. Wow. Now, while we're glued to the TV on Wednesday for the start of the hearings, Donald Trump will be welcoming Turkish President Erdogan to the White House, complete with red carpet treatment. Remember, this is the authoritarian leader who led a military attack last month on U.S. allied Syrian Kurds, including women and children, across the border in Syria. The Nation magazine on Thursday published Joe Biden an anti-endorsement, calling on Biden, quote, to put service to country above personal ambition and withdraw from the race. Jeff Sessions is expected to announce his comeback Senate candidacy on Thursday. He faces not only a big GOP primary in Alabama, but also the president, who has never forgiven Sessions for recusing himself in the Russia probe. Should be interesting. Remember the whistleblower? Well, Republicans just can't let go. On Wednesday, Rand Paul blocked legislation that would protect whistleblowers in the Senate. Republican calls for the media to publish the name of that original whistleblower have been amplified in recent days, with Donald Trump Jr. actually tweeting a Breitbart link that names someone. Whether that person is the whistleblower or not is unknown. But this is dangerous territory. Much of the right-wing media is running with the story, but not Fox. CNN Business obtained a copy of an October 31st email from a Fox executive to staffers that said the network had not independently confirmed the name or identification of the anonymous whistleblower. The executive further advised production staffers to, quote, not fulfill any video or graphic requests related to the whistleblower's identity. Well, the trial of longtime Trump ally and self-described political dirty trickster Roger Stone began Wednesday with opening statements. Stone stands accused of lying to Congress, obstructing Congress, and witness tampering in the course of the Russia investigation. And as if things in Trumpland aren't confusing enough, the prosecutor in this case is an assistant U.S. attorney named Zelensky. Yes, Aaron Zelensky, not to be confused with the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky. And as far as I know, there's no relation. But stranger things have happened, I suppose. Donald Trump is the president. Anyway, in his opening statement, Zelensky said, quote, evidence will show Roger Stone lied to the House Intelligence Committee because the truth looked bad. The truth looked bad for the Trump campaign, and the truth looked bad for Donald Trump, end quote. Among the startling revelations from day one, the prosecution's story strongly suggests that Donald Trump lied to Robert Mueller about his interaction with Stone regarding the WikiLeaks releases of stolen documents from the DNC. Now, keep in mind that Zelensky works for Donald Trump's Department of Justice. And finally, while the internet is buzzing about the soon-to-be-released book by the anonymous author of that New York Times op-ed that says the resistance is inside the White House, Mark Halpern quietly released his first book since his career was upended by allegations of sexual harassment. It's called How to Beat Trump, and it sold a whopping 502 copies in its first week. And that's just a bit of what's news for now. I'm Nicole Sandler. If you appreciate these reports and the Nicole Sandler Show, I hope you'll consider making a contribution. My work is 100% listener supported, so I can't do it without your help. Find out more at NicoleSandler.com. After you've checked it out a bit, I hope you'll click on that donate button.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. We always begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River and the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon, on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 41 degrees Fahrenheit. We are slated for a high, say, of around 71 to 73. Maybe it'll be 70. But nice seasonable weather for the season, I would say. Overnight temperatures are supposed to be in the mid to upper 40s, but we'll see about that. Tomorrow, expected a high of about 74 to 75. Sun and clouds will be mixed tonight. Winds will be light and variable today and tonight and tomorrow. Some clouds this evening will give way to mainly clear skies, and then we'll have sunny skies all day tomorrow. Ragweed pollen is rated low. The air quality index is moderate at 56 parts per million, though we do continue. They have upped the air stagnation advisory warning, and so that does continue. The daytime UV index is low at 2. Barometric pressure is rising at 30.13 inches. Visibility is up to 9 miles. And relative humidity locally is at 78%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is 50 degrees and fair. Rome is 64 degrees and fair. Kiev, wow, they dropped Paris on me. How dare they drop Paris? Well, we don't have Paris today. We'll get it tomorrow. Okay, so where are we? Kiev is 48 with light rain. Kabul is 46 and fair. Hong Kong is 70 degrees and fair. Tokyo is 61 and fair. Sydney, Australia is 66 degrees and clear. San Francisco, California is 50 degrees with fog. And New York is 55 degrees and cloudy, and you do have a rain advisory coming in. And that is weather from around the world except for Paris. What happened? Brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Lucien Liebert and Joseph Cipollon of Reuters bring us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Cambodia's self-exiled opposition party founder, Sam Rainsy, who has vowed to return to his home country to lead demonstrations against authoritarian rule, said he had been prevented on Thursday from checking in for a flight from Paris to Bangkok. Rainsy, apparently being barred from boarding, came a day after Malaysia detained his party's vice president, Mu Socha, at an airport before releasing her 24 hours later. Cambodia's longtime Prime Minister, Hun Sen, whose government has arrested some 50 opposition activists inside Cambodia and deployed troops to the border, has characterized the returning leader's planned rallies as an attempted coup. Rainsy told Reuters at Paris's Charles de Gaulle Airport that Thai Airways staff refused to allow him to board, but that he would not be deterred from trying again. I am not allowed to board. They say they have received from very high up the instructions not to allow me to board, he said. I'm very shocked. I'm very disappointed. I want to go back. My people are waiting for me. A Thai Airways representative declined to comment, citing passenger confidentiality. They always do. Rainsy has not said what his travel plans are. Rainsy, former finance minister and founder of the now banned opposition Cambodian National Rescue Party, has lived in exile in France since fleeing Cambodia 4 years ago following a conviction for criminal defamation. He also faces a 5-year prison sentence in a separate case. He says the charges were politically motivated to destroy opposition to Hun Sen. Why does all this seem so familiar? You know, it used to be only those countries that did that. Now we are on the cusp of doing it ourselves.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mes automnes, quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers, c'est tout.
Diane Bartz and Katie Paul, also of Reuters, bring us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. 2 former employees of Twitter and a third man from Saudi Arabia face U.S. charges of spying for the kingdom by digging up private user data and giving it to Saudi officials in exchange for payment, a complaint from the Justice Department shows. Ali Al-Zabara and Ahmed Abu Mamo, who used to work for Twitter, and Ahmed Al-Matari, who then worked for the Saudi royal family, face charges of working for Saudi Arabia without registering as foreign agents. The indictment points an unusually public figure at Saudi Arabia, a U.S. ally that maintains warm ties with Trump despite its bad human rights record. Saudi Arabia has not yet publicly remarked to the complaint. Now, these charges began in 2015, or the investigation goes back to at least 2015, and these people, or these men, were turned by Saudi Arabia. And some of this, I got to tell you, they don't mention this in the article, but it seems like they could have been tracking folks like Khashoggi. All right, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day. But you do know that Netroots Radio is going to broadcast on, and we're going to meet up tomorrow for Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. We'll meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.